Kent County, Grand Rapids. He did it again in 2020 in a losing effort. He did it again just this past weekend, Monday night at midnight, right? He rolled into, wow. Yeah, he rolled into Florida at 5:30 in the morning. That was yesterday morning. No, it wasn't. It was this morning, wasn't it? Right. Because it was Wednesday, right? Okay, you follow me on the calendar? Okay, yeah, okay. But it's been stubborn. It appears that it will stick that way as well. Kent County and Grand Rapids will stay in the blue column. It's a changing area, you know, this west coast of Michigan. But what I'm seeing right now, even though you have just about 60% of the vote in, I'm seeing a lot of red lining up and down Lake Michigan. And for a while, you know, that had changed. It seemed to be shifting a little bit. There's a county right here called Muskegon, beautiful part of the world. And that had seemed to be drifting in the Democratic column as well. But Trump's got a firm grip on it now, 16 points. And I'll just go west of Muskegon, or sorry, south of Muskegon, west of Grand Rapids, is Ottawa County there. Like for years, this was like a Republican bastion. Trump kept it that way in 2020, winning by 21.5 points. In 2016, in Ottawa specifically, you ran away with it at 30 points. And so it will stay that way tonight. And let me just come out to real-time data here and let you know where we are statewide. You've got some vote out there, but you see this margin here yet again. Just as I'm talking here, guys, it's ticking higher. 210,967, 6.3 percentage point lead in Michigan. I'm not going to say it because it's not my job, but it looks like the blue wall could stay intact yet again for another year where it votes in unison with the winning party who takes the White House that year.
Since 1988, that has held.
I think we're getting ready for a call.
I think we are too. Are we?
Fox News can now project that the state of Georgia will go to former President Donald Trump. This was a really hard-fought battle. If you think about Georgia, loses it last time to President Biden by 11,779 votes. For some reason, that number sticks in my mind. And this is a big win. He went there, campaigned there, and so did Vice President Harris numerous times, thinking that Georgia could stay in the Democratic column.
You know, he had a difficult relationship with Governor Brian Kemp. If you remember, 4 years ago, after losing Georgia, they tried to salvage 2 Senate races in Georgia. A month later, special elections. That didn't go well either. So this is a very big win for former President Trump to, you know, have this redemption in Georgia tonight.
So now we are at Electoral College vote at 248 for Trump and 216 for Harris. We have a panel. We're welcoming in Darren Shaw, a member of the Fox News Decision Desk. Welcome in Juan Williams as well, along with Karl Rove. Darren, we got you out here. We were going to say, what happened? Are we calling Georgia? And then you push the button.
Are you here to tell us that we were right when we said you called Georgia?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I thought you were going to come down here to grill me, and we preempted that.
What else are we going to call?
You guys called Georgia in the nick of time for you, Darren.
That's exactly right.
While we have you, how do you see this night? And was it like you thought going in? And as you look at the blue wall there?
Well, I think 2 things. This is an election that is unprecedented by my standards because the more data I saw, the more possibilities seemed to unfold. There was stuff a couple weeks ago I didn't think could happen. I didn't think Trump could win, let's say, the national vote. I'm not saying he's going to, but that was something that nobody thought could happen. That's a possibility. We had a lot of conversations about whether these, swing states were going to move together or whether they were going to sort of crack and each move separately. There's a possibility tonight that, I didn't think this would happen earlier in the afternoon, but that he could sweep all of them. That's not a prediction, but it's something that's within the realm of possibility with the data we've seen.
You're saying blue wall turns into a red wall.
It's possible. And that wasn't something anybody was talking about. People talked about Michigan, in particular, as being the toughest state for Trump to crack. Now, Bill's shown the data recently. We've been looking at it for hours. Michigan's looking very difficult for her right now.
All these toss-up states had been within a point or 2. So is there any way to look at what you see now and say this could be a win in a larger percentage than that? I mean, a lot of these states are still close, but...
Right. What we're looking at right now, we have sort of model data, and we're looking to reach a certain level of statistical significance to make a call. We're also looking at what we call the outstanding vote. And so, for instance, in the case of Georgia, we were modeling about 835,000 outstanding votes. A lion's share of them were coming from suburban Atlanta. You know, she needed to hit about 55, 56%. She was getting about 45%. And at a certain level, that becomes a statistical impossibility. You know, the more data you get, the less room she has to actually grow or do better than she's been performing. And so that sort of triggered the call in Georgia. We're not quite there yet in the other states, but this may not be an election where we need to be here till Thursday or Friday.
Right. And so when they say go home, relax, you're saying maybe not yet.
We'll see if they, continue to count. Arizona and Nevada have been particularly stubborn about that. We understand in Nevada they don't allow any counting until the last vote has been cast, which is, we think, why we're getting basically nothing from Nevada so far. Yeah. But Arizona, it's coming in sort of droves. It's a close race there. Wisconsin and Michigan. Michigan seems to be counting there at like 54, 55%. Wisconsin at 2 a.m. in 2020 had counted 99% of the votes. So we think there's a chance we might have enough data in Wisconsin, maybe Michigan. So we may have some resolution more quickly than we had thought.
So in Pennsylvania, Sean talked about this earlier, the early vote and what that looked like and what she would have to do day of in Philadelphia and those counties right around there. Is it possible that that's still out there and it's possible to do?
Well, it seems to be a probability diminishing by the hour. I think this is something from the Georgia data, but we've also seen it in Pennsylvania. Young African-American men did not come home. Part of the African-American vote came home to her, but a lot of it didn't, and there's a gender gap there. And the Georgia, I think, I have to run the numbers, and I'm not going to lay this at the feet of any demographic group in particular, but she really did seem to underachieve amongst African-American males, especially young African-American males.
I mean, it just makes me think about Michelle Obama and Barack Obama, the former president, and the very strong appeals that they made. Michelle Obama said, don't let your husband or boyfriend's rage dictate your vote. President Obama talked about bringing out the brothers and scolding them. That does not seem to have been a strategy that worked.
Darren, did the Fox News voter analysis track with what you saw with raw vote as you went around the states?
Yes. There were a couple. What we're doing early on is we get the early vote from Indiana and Kentucky. It allows us to kind of figure out, is the FNVA performing consistent with the data? There were a couple states where Trump overperformed a bit. Florida was one. We were a little concerned that we might be overestimating Trump's performance in rural areas. But the more data we got, the more that didn't seem to be the case. It seemed like he was basically hitting what we thought he would hit.
We've got the brain here. Did anybody else have a question for Darren?
I'm curious about immigration and what you've seen in terms of how much that played into the votes in some of these states.
Well, I think the one thing we can say is that it didn't repel people. In particular, there was some talk about the Hispanic vote coming home over the issue of immigration. That did not seem to happen much at all. The FNVA suggested, I think it was 40% was Trump's performance amongst Latinos. That ended up being, I think, within 13 or 14 points of Harris's. I mean, if you showed me data before the election and said, that he's going to get 15% of the African-American vote, 40% of the Hispanic vote, I'd say that's an awfully tough night for a Democrat to win an election in.
There's some reporting that Trump has won Erie County, Pennsylvania. Is that square with anything you understand?
I think it was on sort of a knife's edge. I don't know if Bill's got the latest data, but
it was what would go here?
It's part of her hope, right?
Went back to the Trump team, and right now, currently, just to keep you guys up to date, he leads it by a point in 1.4, which is a little less than 2,000 raw votes.
And it's 99%
left out. How much is it? 99% in, or 90? What did you say?
90%. Statewide, 90%. Darren, I got a question for you. When you think about the blue wall in the upper Midwest, when we were at the convention in Milwaukee in July, it ended on a Thursday. On a Friday, we had that national computer glitch. All the airports were shut down. So all the delegates and all the journalists and all the campaign folks were stranded at the airport in Milwaukee. And I was still thinking at the time about, why did I just see Kid Rock? And why did I see Hulk Hogan? And why did I see Dana White? And I went to the campaign and I said, what's going on there? Because it was men. It was white men. And they said, we notice in the upper Midwest, at the time they were thinking about Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio to a lesser degree, and Pennsylvania. That's what they were thinking about. And they said, we noticed that there was a certain percentage of white men who voted in 2016. They sat out 2020, and we're trying to win them back. Is there evidence that those white males in those upper Midwest states did that tonight?
There was sort of a rule of thumb we were adopting that, and we spoke about this a little bit earlier in conversation with y'all, but that, the gender gap is a double-edged sword. Gender gap can help or hurt depending upon, the absolute level of support. We were looking at 55%. In other words, if Trump was hitting 55% with men, that was a good sign. If Harris was hitting 55% with women, that was a good sign. And in the upper Midwest states, he was getting closer to that sort of magic number than she was. So what they call it, the bro strategy or whatever, it seems to have paid some dividends up there. I mean, we're still waiting, but, it's looking pretty good for him.
So we can definitively say that the poll that we don't talk about in Iowa was kind of off. The Des Moines Register poll.
I love Ann Seltzer. She's a giant and a pioneer in our field. I think, what we were looking at, ironically, was not so much the top line in that race, but what Seltzer had said was that senior women were breaking away from Trump over the abortion issue. And I think our friend Sean Trende had a really good observation where he said that may be true, but it may not help Harris, because that's something that could occur in Iowa where abortion was a hot issue, but might not occur nationally in other states where abortion wasn't as salient.
We have to let you go, but really quickly, what's happening in Minnesota?
That's what I was going to ask, exact question.
Minnesota, why is that still?
They have done what sometimes they do in states. They've stopped counting votes.
Really?
And we're kind of close
After all
to.
we've been through with that.
After all we've been through?
We're at a level where we're close to statistical significance, but it's not quite there yet. And there are
Is
still.
Tim Walz in charge of that?
Yeah, well,
There you go.
rumor has it.
We have to let you go because you
Wow.
have some more data crunching to do.
I do.
We appreciate you coming
Thank you,
by.
Darren.
Thanks,
It really
Darren.
does
Good
help
job, Darren.
a lot.
For coming
Good
by.
job.
Great
Very
job.
nice to see you guys. Thank you.
Let's check in with Aisha Hosni at the
Let's
Trump
do that.
campaign headquarters. Aisha?
Hey, you guys. Well, all signs here are pointing to perhaps imminent remarks from the former president shortly. The biggest debt giveaway was a short while ago. Somebody went onto the stage right behind me and put up the glass for the teleprompter. So perhaps somebody will be speaking to the crowd here shortly, and that might be the former president. We've got eyes